it is finally that time. A big first for me that I've never formally reviewed an album by this band before. This past week, we had 2 albums from some of the radio rock titans of the 2000s. We wanted to review one of them in this first slot, and even though I like more of their catalogue, I couldn't be bothered indulging David Draymond's bullshit this time. So, it's time to talk Nickelback and their new album, Get Rollin'. I think there's something quite fun about reviewing Nickelback, that, as a podcast that, no offense intended to anybody in Nickelback or whatever, but we come from a world that tends to treat them like a joke, and a punchline and something to be sneered and giggled at. But in 2022, I think it's fair to say the world of peak Nickelback hate is pretty much no more. There was a news story I saw a couple of weeks ago where Corey Taylor had said that Imagine Dragons had taken up the mantle of the most hated rock band from Nickelback. And I'm pretty sure that same news story was wheeled out when he last said that about 4 years ago. Like, that happened quite a long time ago. We've moved on. So, where do we all stand on Nickelback?
I mean, I have a weird soft spot for Nickelback as a band. Like, part of that comes from the fact that people give Nickelback so much shit and then will then hype up shit versions of Nickelback. And that is why, like, I've always come around to be like, man, Nickelback aren't that bad. Like, and they were a pretty, formative band when I was first getting into rock music as like a wee 13-year-old, like getting into Evanescence. Silver Side Up was one of those albums that I gravitated towards because that album is actually kind of good. And there's a lot of shit with Nickelback, as you'd expect, but I've never hated them. I've never really got it.
Yeah, I've not really felt strongly one way or the other. Like, when everyone was hating Nickelback, I always just thought, the intro to Follow You Home, that drum tattoo is Wolf is Loose Big, but bold claim, setting them out early. But when someone really hates on Nickelback, it's almost more a reflection on them than it is on the band. It's like when someone, it's like if someone this year goes like, "Oh, I hate Justin Bieber."
I agree.
What? How is it's not like you can't escape them anymore. Like, if you don't want to listen to Nickelback, it's fairly easy not to. You kind of have to seek them out in a way that maybe you didn't 15 years ago. So, I don't know, the cycle of hating them, it feels like we've sort of moved on. We've escaped that downward spiral. So I was going in with quite an open mind.
Yeah, I do think it's hilarious that you're still relatively early on in joining us on this podcast, and I'm making you review Nickelback at this stage. I know that I started a bit of a war on this podcast once for my opinions on Rockstar, but that is an extreme moment where the Nickelback character is so fucking beyond and crosses a Rubicon. In general, they are just so far removed from my interest as a rock fan and what I engage with on kind of a regular basis. They are the rare band in this sphere that weirdly aren't actually that hateable to me, even though they are the most stereotypically hated one of them.
Yeah.
And it's because I think they are they're sort of out on a limb in just terms of how unshrinking it's being and how just totally Nickelback and fucking proud they are about it. And as much as I said that about Rockstar, How You Remind Me, clearly a good song.
A classic.
I do think it's a bit mad that they've never been asked to headline a download as far as we're aware. People would give them shit on the internet, but then they turn up and everyone would sing along to How You Remind Me and Something in Your Mouth and everything, and it'd absolutely work.
Burn it to the ground would go off, I don't care.
Yeah, they are the untouchable kings of a thing that I, as a rule, don't like, which is post-Black Album bastardization K-rock. But there is something that is just so absurd about them. Why have there been so many Nickelback memes and no Breaking Benjamin ones? There is a character that is totally different. And there was an interview from a week ago where Chad Kroeger was like, we don't take this band seriously at all. We are a bunch of goofy idiots. Nickelback is hilarious. The last thing I remember from the main thing I remember from the last album is just how much fun it was, whether it was actually a good song or not, to just sing along to Coin for the Ferryman. And then when this came along and had this album cover, and the quote that came with it was, "This one is loaded with rock, the way Nickelback was intended to be." I can't go into that with my knives out.
No, I think that's kind of how I feel. Is I do think there is a self-awareness to Nickelback. They know they are just playing the biggest, dumbest, you're right, bastardization of radio rock, but they have always like all on every Nickelback album. I reckon there is at least one like absolute banger per Nickelback album, at the very least. Sometimes multiple bangers, but
Well, I think this is the most I've ever listened to a full Nickelback album. So
I would listen to Silver Side Up on the Long Road back.
Yeah, they were not formative for me, and I have not spent lots of time with them. So, formally reviewing this is the most I've actually spent any time with one particular set of 11 Nickelback songs, which is it's almost an eye-opening experience.
I think, as you say, the reason why they're so popular, it's not a mystery and it's not a mistake. It's because Chad Kroeger, for all his mistakes, as we'll get to, he is a man of quite substantial talent. It might be a thing that most people don't respect or admire. He might use his powers for evil, but there is an element of Nickelback which isn't present in their contemporaries, and I think they recognise that, and that's why they're able to have fun with it too.
Yeah, I do agree. And in regards to this one being loaded with rock, the way Nickelback was intended to be, San Quentin with the panic chords, genuinely harder production job on this album than most other things in this world. Like, in 2022, this is genuinely much heavier than the Disturbed album, which has that horrible Kevin Churko car compactor guitar sound. This is hilariously, it's much more organic. Like, it sounds like a realer band, and there is still something about Nickelback that, for as Coca-Cola as it is, you can still picture them being four guys kind of having some fun together, doing something like San Quentin. And that song, when Kroeger is giving it some with that, let's get the suckers out on the road, with the fully insane Hetfield caricature, I sort of think this song is great. Like, it's so pumping and uncontained and completely unashamed in how laughably hard rock Nickelback it is. It's so catchy.
I was a bit like, okay, it came out, I was like, the panic chords was kind of just the intro and then does that, but now I'm like, no, mate, San Quentin's a rager.
Yeah, we were covering oh my god, this Nickelback song's exciting people as a meme, and then the song fucking slaps.
I think it's hard to dislike any song which has the lyric, let the record show I did it all for
rock and roll.
That's like having his Neil Fallon moment. It's just glorious.
It's a banger. I don't care. I think the thing is, I think Nickelback have always been at their best when they are particularly kind of the Nickelback post Dark Horse, when they became just this massive radio rock band, where they are just big meat-headed smash a beer can against your head rock songs.
Yeah,
they are legitimately really good at that.
Well, I think
the other side
of
the coin is a bit.
I can say this album. I was just on the exact same point as you there. This album is almost like a lesson in that, in terms of the bits where it does that and the bits where it doesn't.
Yeah, that is totally that is legitimately my feeling on this album. Is all the songs where they just gonna go, let's crank up the guitars, let's headbang, and let's just be big, loud, and dumb. I think it's actually the best that this kind of music can be, in a way.
It's certainly, it's undeniably, when they're doing that, it's higher standard than when most bands are doing this. Even when it is still something that would make quite a lot of people come out in hives, where
Skinny Little Missy.
The riff in Skinny Little Missy is a dirty fucking 2000 stadium rock version of a sleaze metal riff or something, and I don't actually know if that's a good or a bad thing. On one hand, it is disgusting with Chad Kroeger singing about the Skinny Little Missy, which feels like it's been lifted out of a time capsule that was placed the exact time that Michael Bay did those Megan Fox shots in the first Transformers movie. And on the other hand, it's fuck it, shake your hips, Skinny Little Missy, don't want no boyfriend. And then the lead section comes out in that, and it's shred.
Yeah, and again, it's just that stomp and everything on it is it's just kind of hit hard,
Yeah, there is
bad as it probably is.
Well, this is the thing with song is actually a pretty good example. There is a part of it you go this is a bit like drunk dad at the karaoke. You're kind of wincing a bit at what he's doing. But on the other hand, he is bringing the house down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're kind of quietly proud, even if you're hiding your face. So the first two songs, it's kind of like a Enter Sandman, Sad But True thing for Nickelback.
I mean, it is. I get what you mean by that.
Yeah, I could structurally, actually, and in terms of what each song does, not far off. And then later on, you got Vegas Bomb, which I do think it does wonders. Like I said, at the very least, they kind of sound like real guitars. I've gotten so used to since post Five Finger Death Punch getting massive, every one of these bands going through that Kevin Churko filter. And, like, even though I like more of their songs than I do Nickelback's overall, but, like, let's face it, Nickelback sound more like a metal band here than Five Finger Death Punch do, than, like, Papa Roach do anymore. And so when it does just go, like, super ignorant with stuff like Vegas Bomb, I can respect that more because it kind of sounds the part. I mean, it sounds better than their 2000s records did, actually. Like, this is the rare case of this band, one of these type bands, actually sort of almost aging more into a rock production job here.
No, I totally agree. I think, like, Vegas Bomb is the other way. Like, that riff is legitimately, like, big and hard.
Yeah, I mean, they're really funny, their riffs. They just have that really kind of poppy Nickelback sensibility, but, like, go with it.
It's silly, daft, but, like, there is an legitimate, like, hard rock and roll swagger to it as well that, like, that sells it. They sell these songs to you, and they make it sound like, again, cringy and crass as they might be, the conviction that with which the whole band, not just, like, Kroger on vocals, but the whole band deliver these songs with, it does sound authentic. I can't believe I'm saying that about Nickelback, but it does.
You know, it's a low bar when some of the compliments we've given so far are, it sounds authentic, and they do sound like guitars. But like, Vegas Bomb, when that came in, I was thinking, like, it's a bit Black Label Society. Like, it's pretty sort of squeaky and screechy for a Nickelback riff. I know, like, they've got the big hulking, as you say, like, borderline Kevin Churko style. But when that came in, it was like, that's kind of serpentine and sneaky. And sort of
Chad Kroger is so much better a songwriter than Zakk Wylde is. Like,
oh yeah,
but unbelievably so. And then there are the bits where it goes bro country,
yes.
Which when people go like, "Oh, I like all music, but not country," the thing that's ruined country is when it became mainstream in the 21st century and evolved into like Florida Georgia Line and Luke Bryan and stuff. And because Nickelback are so unbelievably polished and so geared towards the mainstream in every aspect of their production and their songwriting, when they go country, they can't help but sound like that. And, you know, they play alongside those acts sometimes, right? They're headlining a festival next year, I saw, alongside Keith Urban and Tim McGraw. And there is a massive audience there that will eat it up. But I will take how fully daft Nickelback are when they're heavy doing it. When it is the last stadium clap-along chorus in these days, about like, ooh, reminiscing. Maybe not so much.
The thing is I'm like, these days, I'm like, oh god, it's so cringy and sickly. And then that last chorus comes on the clap along, I'm like, oh, but it does sound quite big. Like that, like, and again,
that's the bit that sends it over the
that.
edge of like too saccharine for me.
Like, that's the problem is it's too saccharine, and then because it goes that step even further, it kind of wins me around.
Remember when we thought that first base was just holding hands?
Oh my god. The way he delivers that line is like it's meant to be endearing. Like he's going, oh, can't we go back to the glory days when I didn't know what fingering was? It was like, how is this supposed to be like sweet or cute? It's just... Oh, and why is he singing like that? That's the other thing. Is like he has this sort of way of singing where it's like, it sounds like he's being hugged too tight. Like he's kind of wheezing through it, and it's like, you don't... Like, Chad, you've got quite a commanding... Like, for what anyone could say about Nickelback, he's got quite a commanding, rich, reverberant voice. And on that one, he's just sort of, like, wheezing his way through it. And it's like, how is this meant to be your lighters in the air moment when you sound like you're having an asthma attack?
The thing is, this song is on every Nickelback album, because it's basically Photograph again. It is the exact same song. Like... And the thing is, again, like, Photograph is cheesy seconds as well, but it is a lot better than this version of it. But when they go so big on that last chorus with the clap along and all that, isn't it? I'm just like, oh god, it's terrible, but I kind of do find myself getting swept up in it. There are other moments where they do that on the sound where I do just go, oh, Nickelback, please stop. Go back to being, like, big, dumb, loud rock
Well, I mean,
band.
like I said, I go along with Nickelback more when it is completely fucking over the top.
Yeah.
Like, maybe, like, where you're not quite sure how aware they are of its silliness. I mean, Chad Kroger, like I said, he seems to, he's said that they seem to be in on it. So when you then have on the other side of the country coin, which I can't believe they put the two country songs consecutively as well, like one after the other, but High Time, full Luke Bryan, oh, it's a party time in the cornfields type song, which has like the talk box or like whatever the kind of like weird squelchy effects are in the verses. That's where I go, like, I don't even know how to critique this. It's so in its own lane.
It's stoner country, innit? It is so daft. Like, Again, I don't know if I can defend that one. I'm like, it's so silly, but I'm also just like, again, they seem like that's one where they've got to be aware that this is stupid. They must be like just taking the piss on this.
But here's the thing. I mean, we are a UK podcast reviewing this. If you are one of our North American listeners and you think Nickelback are funny, imagine how funny we think they are. Like, there is such a disconnect between particularly stuff that sounds like High Time, because that gets nowhere in the UK. Like, there's an enormous audience for stuff like High Time that is completely unaware of how utterly daft it is.
I mean, I think the worst contender on this album, and I don't want to leap too far ahead, but Steel Still Rusts. I mean,
Who says that?
I think Preachy Nickelback might be worse than Horny Nickelback. Like, if we're putting their songs into categories, when they're doing like When We Stand Together and that sort of thing, that might be the worst sort of thing they do. And there's a bit in it where, because the whole song's about people who go off to war and come back, and they're not given the help they're needed, or they give their service and they come back and they're not treated properly. And there's this bit where he's talking about how they become bodyguards for famous rock stars, and he says that to us as if we're meant to feel bad. It's like, that's you. Like,
that's going back into my fucking problem with Rockstar. Again, he's done it again, but for the military. I think the worst parts of Nickelback are when it is super serious. Because like the ballads and stuff, I just drift off, and the second half of this album, it's so weird because it like you said, it has that Enter Sandman, Sad But True modelled 1-2, and then a 1-2 of country songs, and then after Vegas Bomb after that, the second album like comes to a halt, and it's weird because it's such a insane Coca-Cola product. Like, there's not much to be gained in terms of like a tangible sense of melancholy or whatever. You just want it to pump along and throw its weight around, pumping your fist along to it. The only point where it does one of those ballads that again reaches the point of being almost like so over the top that it becomes like ironically enjoyable again is Does Heaven Even Know You're Missing, where the intensity in Chad's voice becomes hilarious. And what we're saying about that lyric in These Days, you've been looking for a soul to save, it's not a problem, you can borrow mine. It's like, how has this song not been written before? This feels like it should be in like the most over earnest movie scene from 20 years ago.
Or South Park.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally a Trey Parker song. Yeah.
Yeah, I do just think post Vegas Bomb, like this album does just like drive off a cliff a little bit. Like, again, because I think like as like naff as those days and High Time Art, they're funny. Like, at the very least, the back half of the summit it does just get a bit dour, and like it's like serious Nickelback, and like again, I still laugh at him saying "still rust" because that's just such a stupid, like, his delivery of it is so stupid, and like it's like, oh, we're deep now, but I'm just like, I want to be having fun with Nickelback.
There are still some like okay pop choruses, like "Standing in the Dark" towards the end has got like if Katy Perry did that chorus, it's got that kind of uplifting feel to it. I don't know what's going on with Just One More, like the last curveball at the end, like synth.
Got to get some strings on there and be classy.
Yeah, but it's like synth and like vocal processing and stuff like that. Don't know what that's about. It's very out of character.
But that's a weird finale because he's asking if we have room for just one more. But that is the one more. That's the last song. So it's like, if we said no, well, it's too bad we've got it. And if we say yes, that's it.
It's the end. Yeah.
So you cannot be happy with the way the album ends.
Yeah, they keep trying to do this like twinkling stars in the night sky thing. And I feel like I've been misled because it's not full of rock, this album. It's got like a few rockers that are admittedly amongst the higher end rockers of Nickelback's oeuvre. And then he gets all maudlin. And like, you don't really want that. Like, you're good at the NASCAR shit, Nickelback. Like, do that and less of the, oh, we're hanging around on like at the end of the NASCAR race and we're like getting pensive now and thinking about our feelings. Like, bring back shit like She Keeps Me Up, I say. Like, just go completely far off the deep end. But even still, even in like the latter part of this record, there are better choruses on this than any Hailstorm, Shinedown, Blackstone Cherry, even recent Alter Bridge albums.
I don't know, the latest Alter Bridge album was actually like the highest standard of this sort of thing. But like, that's what I'm talking about, where like people who will say they hate Nickelback but gas up Hailstorm and Shinedown, I'm like, you're chatting shit. Nickelback, like even the worst songs on this are better than some of the best Shinedown songs. I don't care. Like,
well, I mean the reason I like San Quentin and Skinny Little Missy is they sound like along with like Devour by Shinedown. They sound like they should be soundtracking the opening scene of The Final Destination.
Yeah,
but otherwise, like, yeah, I mean, certainly, like, again, like Hailstorm and so on, no chance. And it's a strange era for bands like Nickelback, I think, because you do look at them and go, when was the last, like, mega hit? You know, the one that everyone knows. Like, a lot of you listening will never listen to a new Nickelback album by choice. And as such, having not done that for however many years, you probably can't name a song of theirs released since the 2000s. And like, I know,
like Burn It Down, Burn It to the Ground. Like, it's probably the last really big one, and because that was like a wrestle metal theme.
Well, I mean,
song,
Dark
like,
Horse was in 2000.
Yeah, that's the album it was on.
Like,
yeah, so fuck me, that's a long time ago now.
Yeah, like, and I know, like, they are clearly wildly popular still. The songs here will do numbers beyond anything else that we talk about this week. Like, the inbuilt audience is there and is unfathomably large, and it will be forever. But in terms of like crossover hits, I guess it's a case of, you know, how rock music has kind of fared in the mainstream, that like even bands like Nickelback aren't getting, you know, kind of like top 10 singles or whatever anymore the way they did in the mid 2000s. But the flip side is, like we were saying at the start of this, they're not annoying anyone anymore because of that. And as they just like keep comfortably supplying for the people who want to check in, most of this album I will never hear again. San Quentin is probably one of the best Nickelback songs ever to my ears. Like, it's fun enough, and I'll remember that, and I'll go forward and go, oh yeah, I had some fun with that Nickelback album.
Yeah, no, that's kind of largely how I feel. Like San Quentin, I'm like, that is like a legitimate good song. That'd go on like if I wanted a playlist of just like big dumb like rock songs. It could make its way onto that sort of playlist. You know, I can't bring myself to hate this album, even if a lot of it is a bit crap.
Yeah, Nickelback with Get Rollin'. If you are a Nickelback lifer, a Nickelback truther, let us know where you think this is ranking in their catalogue of late.